Hello, this is Maya, and today is August 24th, 2019. What I'm going to read to you is not in my book, but it comes from what I have saved in an old file of mine. From 1969 through 1975, I saw 37 of Elvis's concerts, mostly in Las Vegas, one in Lake Tahoe, one in Phoenix, and one in San Antonio, where I lived. And during that time, I wrote for two, that I remember, two Elvis fan club newsletters. You know, we're talking about the Stone Age, so there's no internet, there's no online newsletters or anything like that. There's no forums. There's just written, printed little newsletters that were mailed to you. And when you wrote an article, you had to mail that to them. That's the way it went in those days. Just a little cut above smoke signals. So I have only saved a few of these, and I mean a few. I have one, two, three. I have three in my hands here, and I wrote a whole lot more, but I don't know where all of those went. And I want to start with what I wrote for Rex Martin's newsletter in the UK. And I'm going to start with 1969. Now, this particular one is not about an Elvis show. I happened to be when I was living in San Antonio, Texas, I happened to be in the Miss Charo contest. And that was an Elvis movie. And it was kind of a different movie for him. It's actually a dramatic movie, although we find out later that they cut all the best scenes in it, and Elvis was very, very disappointed. And I'm sure the Colonel had a hand in that. He obviously did not want Elvis to become renowned as a serious actor of any kind. So, but I was in this contest, okay? And I got to meet with the co-stars, or some of them anyway. So this is my accounting of that, and I'm just going to read it to you. I could not, I don't have it in me to transcribe it, and it's not in good enough shape to scan. So I thought, okay, I'll just read it. So here we go. I haven't read it myself in all these years, so bear with me. I also have cataracts, so I'm going to be stuttering a bit, but here we go. Before I go on to anything else, oh, this is Rex speaking here. Before I go on to anything else, with Peter's permission, I'd like to introduce you all to Miss Christine Hayes. Now, that was my name then. I'm Maya Nartuman now. I was Christine Hayes then, of San Antonio, Texas. Over the past 4 weeks, I've had two very interesting letters from Christine in which she's agreed to let me reprint parts for our newsletter. Christine recently entered the Miss Charo contest and saw a special sneak preview of this movie, and also met a number of Elvis's co-stars in the film, along with many other Elvis happenings. So over to you, Christine. So here's my telling of all of this. I was one of the 3 finalists in San Antonio for the Miss Charo contest. A week before the co-stars were due to come through various cities in Texas, it was announced in the local press that these co-stars would choose the girls for the final judging in Dallas. The winner in each city would receive a wardrobe and be sent to Dallas for the final judging. The eventual winner would then be sent on to Hollywood. I did not win, but Viola Garcia, Kathy Gleason, and myself did get invited to a special preview showing of Charo, and a chance to meet Elvis's co-stars in this film. This competition, by the way, was sponsored by different radio stations and theaters. At the Posado Motor Hotel, we were met by co-stars Solomon Sturgis, Jacqueline Brandt, Catherine Dark, and Megan Timothy. Then we all climbed into a small sightseeing boat and went down the San Antonio River to a private club. There were many newsmen there with some motion picture cameras. Also, many tempting Elvis photos and stills were just lying around. All the co-stars were very nice, especially Mr. Sturgis. His father is Preston Sturgis, a famous director. He was very excited about his role as Billy Roy in the film, and he was telling me how a cannon that was supposed to roll down a hill and crash into a tree instead narrowly missed hitting Elvis himself. He also mentioned that all the water had to be brought out on horseback for the desert scenes. He'd come out of his dressing room during the breaks and play his guitar and sing, meaning Elvis, of course. He would get everyone around to join in and sing. I also began talking to the owner of the theater that was showing this special preview of Charo, and to my surprise, he told me that Colonel Parker and he used to room together and were good friends. He also said that he used to go around with Gene Autry's daughter, and that he and Roy Rogers used to wash dishes for their supper when money was short in Hollywood. In addition to this, he mentioned that back in 1955, when he was a DJ in a radio station, a young boy with long sideburns and a guitar over one shoulder came in and asked him if he could play some of his records that he had with him. It was, of course, Elvis, and he was talking and taking his discs around to all the radio shows to fully promote them. And then I tell a little bit about the film. Of course, we've seen Charo for a few thousand times over, but I'm going to tell you what I had to say about it then. Elvis only sings one song over the credits, the title credits. Just before Elvis sings Charo, 2 gunshots are heard. I believe that Hugh Montenegro's music score in this movie is far better than anything else I've heard him do. It seems to fit the scenery somehow. There are a lot of yep and nope type lines in the script for Elvis, but these provide some really good scenes throughout. The best scene was when the bad guys held him down and burned his neck with a red-hot poker. It shows a close-up of Elvis's face in pain. After he's branded, they leave him lying there and stand around jeering. To their astonishment, Elvis tries to get up and finally succeeds. Elvis portrays a rather cold person, totally unlike any other character he has ever done before. On the whole, I found this film very enjoyable and very different, to say the least. Well, of course, from the perspective of now, it was really a very mediocre film because they cut the best scenes that Elvis had. In fact, Billy Roy had the best scenes in the picture, certainly not Elvis. And that was due to the cutting them out, because the producer actually gave him good scenes. I mean, they wrote them in the script. He acted them, but they were cut out. I'm sure on Colonel Parker. That's a new name for him, isn't it? Colonel Parker's request, because as I know from other people, he was definitely not wanting Elvis to succeed in that way. So that is that. Oh, no, it isn't. Wait a minute. There's a little bit on the end. Rex is thanking me for that, and then saying, you might also be interested to learn that Christine entered another contest and won first place as the best dressed young adult on Easter Sunday. That same evening, she celebrated by going to an Italian restaurant, and guess what? It turned out that the owner was Mrs. Fontana, the cousin of DJ Fontana, Elvis's drummer for all those years. Christine might have a follow-up article on that. I think I probably did, but it's lost now. Okay, so that's the end of that one. And then we go to another one for Rex Martin's newsletter. And this one, I'm trying to get the date. It was 1972. And this is about one of the Vegas shows. I saw, I reported on many other shows, as I said, but I just don't have those copies, sadly. But this is the 1972, the 28th, let's see, June 28th, 1972. So I'm getting down to the show. It was a June 18th show in Fort Worth. It was in Fort Worth. I'd forgotten I saw him in Fort Worth. So I began with this review saying, The one-man lightning revival eased his way onto the stage of the Tarrant County Convention Center in Fort Worth, Texas, one Sunday in June to command the attention of the 14,000 participants in a mind-expanding, effortless venture, sorry about that has been titled An Elvis Presley Concert. As do all of Mr. Presley's performances, this one excelled in energy and excellence, but to be included was a timelessness, continuance, and interchanging of emotions that must surely take its place among those small yet vital rarities in life that makes us aware of the potency of every second. Elvis is a man of constant physical motion. He changes his flexes of power as easily as most men take a new breath. I think that's psychic motion. These are very faded pieces of paper here, so I'm going to try that again. Where was I? An interchange of emotions that must surely take its place among those small yet vital rarities in life that make us aware as to the potency of every second. Elvis is a man of constant psychic motion. He changes his fluxes of power as easily as most men take a new breath. In this performance, these changes were especially evident as he found no beginning nor end with the audience. His first notes were charged with the compelling rhythm that usually advances from him later in the evening after he has felt his audience, and they have become caught up in the graduating pace of his enchantment. But on this night, Elvis held the special fantasy throughout the entire show, and with equal deftness, he left the stage after singing 24 songs with still more unleashed power in reserve than Niagara Falls could supply on any evening. The moment of ecstasy for the gathered throngs, and possibly also for Mr. Presley, was during and after his tumbling, trembling, and mellow rendition of How Great Thou Art. The silence within the enormous round chamber wrapped each sensitive note in settled assurance of its potent message. With the phrase, "Oh my God, how great thou art," Elvis reached emotions I had not before seen in him, as he mingled raw exuberance and humble sadness in an instant of prayer. The witnesses to this baring of the soul were moved to a spontaneous standing ovation that did not diminish until Elvis repeated the last chorus. Where there is such a moment as this, there must lie more than can be evidenced through entertainment alone. I feel Elvis has become a driving, coaxing core of energies set to rotate in a destiny of chance, where paralleling moments decide the channels for this talent that does not only sustain and refresh his followers, but causes them to build within themselves their own channels of power. So they are gathered in the colliding seconds that are bound to this man. Simply, one gains unseen rewards from the experience. But in addition to being a mystical enchanter, Mr. Presley is a man who knows his business and knows it well. His motions in such numbers as Polk Salad Annie and Suspicious Minds were skillfully timed to display his fluid rhythm, all the while holding back just enough to keep the audience in suspense. Of special prominence was his combination karate ballet, with which he spellbound his admirers as he slid through the purple-blue light with the accuracy of a gazelle in flight. Yes, there was no doubt that Elvis knew his purpose. He was especially inspired this night to such heights that at times he did not seem to be with us, but off in some fathomless rainbow world with only God to listen. But also there were those moments when he shook and teased and strutted and beamed. Around the necks of his fellow workers hangs a gold lightning streak with the letters TCB above it. These charms were Elvis's gifts to them, but also a reminder of his wild daydreaming world that demands both a spiritual and a physical effort from all of them. If you ask one of the group, as Elvis often refers to them, what TCB stands for, they'll tell you it means taking care of business. So, it looks like there might be another article on the back. There's kind of a treasure hunt here. Let me see. I'm going to put this on pause for a moment. Hmm. Oh, you know what? I pressed the wrong button and I didn't put you on hold. All I did was I paused the share. I'm sorry about that. Let me get back to this. I don't know what I did. Stop share. So I had a rustling of papers and all kinds of things. Now I've stopped the share and we're on another picture. Let me go back again. Crazy stuff. Okay, here we go. Now we're back again. So sorry about all that, but I didn't find what I was looking for there, but I do have one other article to share with you. Now this I wrote for Strictly Elvis, I believe. And I don't have a date on it, but it would have been almost certainly 1972 because of the suits I'm describing and everything. It's either 72 or 73. Could be 73. And I see no date in it anywhere. So here we go. Elvis Presley was as a mighty Pegasus with clipped wings as he attempted to soar to the heights during his February performances in Las Vegas this year. It was a melancholy thought that even one possessing such vibrant strength could be brought to terms with the elements, but the flu coupled with complications of pneumonia had proven that we had secretly known all along he is human. But it was Elvis who seemed unable to accept this biological process that gripped him tighter with every night. And I must pause here and say this was probably 73. He was always so sick after that. I mean, not always, but so many of the performances I saw, and I did not see how it was possible for him to put out the energy, the performance, the voice, the complexity that he did with those shows when he was so ill. I just have to say that. But anyway, we're going to continue with the article here. Despite laryngitis, he was undaunted in his efforts, and with the love and support of the audience and his musical companions, he undertook a gallant flight of solid performance. He strained at every tether that bound him. It was a magnificent battle of forces, pitting one against the other, shoulder to shoulder, and Elvis proved to hold his own. Although at times his speaking voice was barely above a whisper, he would lash out in the song of mountain and trilogy as a man calling into a gale, and as if prodded by its master's will, his voice would suddenly emerge from the tender and swollen throat that was choking him a moment before, carrying him through until the last musical vestige of harmony had faded. To encourage his survival, the attire was well matched. The white jumpsuits had almost entirely abandoned the nailheads and replaced them with jewels. Among the display were white jumpsuits with orange, yellow, and gold jewel clusters in the center of the front and back, reaching out to form a spiraling whirlwind fire star. Again, a white suit with a phoenix emerging from the flames, ready for flight upon his chest and back. Another suit, a delicate contrast of light blue with gold vines and leaves upon his collar and shoulders. A white suit with a planetary escapade of small silver Saturns upon a heavenly body. And the imperial suit, white with red, turquoise, and white jewels intermingled with tiny gold studs, forming a yoke about the neck, front, and back, not unlike some Egyptian monarch, with the jewels coming down from the yoke in fans, two in the front and two in the back. Also, as if in the royal military of a celestial kingdom, jewel bands about his arms, underneath an insignia of sovereignty, a churning fireball of flashing reds and turquoise, with a spilling of multicolor on the cuffs. 2 rows of jewels formed down the sides of the legs, splashing in profusion at the base of the flared bottoms, which held bright yellow insets to match the scarf and lining of the cape, the spectacular costume of all performances. His fingers presented the usual array of sparkling accents, as well as a newly added horseshoe that put the 56 version in a vastly dimmer light. It was mounted high on an anvil of gold with a blinding diamond centered in the smaller set of diamonds that composed the U-shape. About his neck he wore two splendid pieces, a gleaming white tusk on a golden chain, and another piece which I believe was a specially designed hand-engraved pendant with 18 diamond-studded leaves representing the male Mali vine that was presented to Elvis recently in Hawaii by a jeweler there. Yep, this is the show I went to right after his Hawaii satellite performance. I say right after, probably a month after, or something like that. But without the kingly background, Mr. Presley would have still remained a top professional as well as a kind of mystical being, while human, still a touch of added grace, immortalness perhaps, that could bring about such a decided victory for him. There were hard times when he was forced to cancel a few midnight shows. At one dinner show, he shakily left the stage for about 15 minutes, but returned to gain applause to complete his performance. Still, despite all odds, there is no man that could have done better or as well and done it in such a spellbinding way. Showman that he is, he made a performance of the struggle, the grimacing, glistening white thing, refusing his captor's imposed limitations, baring his teeth, head back, eyes shut, occasionally panting and stalking the stage. It was quite a scene. Elvis took an obstacle and turned it into a stepping stone for tension and drama. But all this was evidenced in the statement of one girl who yelled at him from her seat in the showroom, "Just stand there, Elvis." Wow. I haven't read this since I wrote it those many years ago. It really brings back a lot of emotions for me. I could say a lot more. I'm going to end this video here. But if those of you listening to this would like to hear more, let me know. And of course, there's my book. And I will be talking about that more later, as you see from the cover. And in my book, I describe how he told his dear friend Wanda Hill about the costumes and his hand in these costumes. Yes, Bill Ballou created the costumes, but what is not really said enough, or if any at all, other than what I've said in this book from Wanda, was that he essentially did create them. He didn't say, oh, put this little jewel here and put that little jewel there. He didn't do that. But he gave the basic, what he wanted, and the reason he wanted it. And it matched a lot of his karate symbols, which were very mystical, but it also came from other areas of Elvis's inner spiritual life. And so these suits were special. They weren't just glamorous. They were an indication of a spiritual path that spoke to Elvis in very deep places in his heart and soul, which is what my book is about. And so I'm going to end for now. Thank you for listening.